Hi, Mike from RunPhys.com. Thank you for watching today's video on the topic of what our arms should be doing when we run. And before we dive into the content of today's video, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the blog if you haven't already, as well as check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/MikeRunPhys. On the Facebook page, we do live videos, question and answer, and it's a good way to either interact directly with me to get questions answered, as well as go more in-depth with the topics that we cover. And we can do it in a longer format as opposed to these quicker videos that go up on YouTube. So check out the Facebook page, subscribe to the blog, and please share with a friend. That'll help this content get out there and make the message more widespread for what we offer here at RunPhys.com. So what do our arms do when we run? Essentially, as our legs are moving, our arms are moving opposite. So as my right leg comes forward, my left arm comes forward, and vice versa. So as our arms are moving, that creates a counter rotation of the spine, and it helps load up our core muscles so that way we can run more efficiently. And so what our arms should be doing when we run is essentially moving back and forth like this. Okay? Our hands should be relatively relaxed. Our elbows should be bent at a comfortable position, not too high, also not too low. And our arms should be relatively swinging forward and backward to, again, counterbalance our legs going forward and backward. But now there's some common bad habits that I see when observing runners and when working with runners in a clinical setting. Now some of those bad habits include our arms being up too high, our arms being too tense, arms swinging too far across the midline like so, as well as arms too far out to the side like this. I'm sure there's a myriad of other bad habits that are out there, but those are the common ones. And so those are the ones that I want to touch on today as far as giving you tips for what to do if you find yourself in any of those positions, or better yet, if you observe one of your running buddies doing some of those bad habits. These are ways that you can instruct them to improve their running form. Now, one other thing that I will say is quite often when our arms are doing something they're not supposed to do, it's usually not the arm's fault. But because our arms are counterbalancing what's going on in the lower half of our body, quite often if our arms are doing something they're not supposed to, they're actually tattletaling on what's not going right further down. Essentially, if our hips are not loading properly in the rotational plane, and quite often that's why we get this. Same way, if we're not absorbing properly in the frontal plane, then we're going to do something like this with our arms. If we're up too high, it's usually a weakness of our hip flexors or our lower abdominals. And so when you look at the arms, they're going to tattle on what's actually going on. And so when we think about how to fix that, we want to start down lower. But as we dive into the rest of our exercises today, you'll see that quite often, even though it's not the arm's fault, we can use the arms to help guide the hips to work more efficiently. So, again, one of the first bad habits that we often see is arms going up too high like this. And what that often indicates is, again, our lower abdominals or our hip flexors aren't generating enough power to help bring our leg through during the swing phase of gait. So when we do this, we're helping to try to lift our knees as we're swinging our leg through. So some of the exercises that can help deal with that are going to be Now another bad habit, like we talked about earlier, is our arms swinging across the midline here. Now there's some experts out there that say that a good guideline is that your arms really shouldn't cross the midline of your body. There's a few exceptions to that, but as a whole, if you're spending too much time with your arms really crossing over, then that's a giveaway that your hips and your core are not absorbing the rotational forces adequately. And so the first thing to focus on is making sure you have proper hip flexibility. In which case, see some of my other videos on proper, or some of the more common hip stretches that can be useful. Once you've addressed those and addressed the stability of your core and of your hips, which again, check out the videos on core and hip strengthening, those can be very helpful. But another exercise we can do is running and doing what I call a zombie drill. So it's a running form drill where instead of running just normal, what you do is you run for 30 seconds with your arms way out to the side. You can do it holding light weights or bricks or whatever you have handy. And what you do is you run in a straight line and just hold your arms way out to the side and don't let your upper body rotate. So what that does is it forces you to stay very stable through here, which changes how your hips have to move to adapt to that. So that's a way to help dial in if your hips are not stabilizing with the rotational movements as they should. And lastly, a bad habit that is also very common is when you watch someone run, the arms are way out to the side like this. Now that can be effective if you're a team sport athlete, say in soccer or football or basketball, where you've got to be able to fend off a defender or an opponent. But when it comes to straight line running, that's a very inefficient way to run. And what it often indicates is some sort of tightness around our hips, or again, a lack of proper strength and stability in the frontal plane of movement. And so what we need to do is get our hips and our core strong enough so that way we don't do this kind of a move. And so one of the best drills to do is, again, this is another form of a zombie drill. What you do is you run for about 30 seconds with your arms straight up in the air. If you've got something to hold, again, a 5 or 10 pound weight, some bricks, a backpack, anything to add some weight, what that does is again, if you are used to running like this with your arms like side to side and high, then by holding your hands way up high with some weight, that really changes your center of gravity and it forces you to dial in through here, through your upper body, which means your hips have to dial in as well. So again, running overhead, hands overhead, and that'll help you fix running form like so. And lastly, just focusing on your running form as far as your arm swing, just simply practicing your arms like so, oftentimes sitting on a ball or sitting on a rug, just practicing your arms going forward and backward, even videotaping yourself can be very helpful in that regard. So, as always, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments or any other topics you'd like to see covered. Check out the blog, check out the Facebook page, share with a friend. I appreciate it all. Run fast, friends.